Okay, let's look at Standard 25, Substandard E. Explain the relationship between Congress and President Bill Clinton, semicolon, include, there's a magic word, the North American Free Trade Agreement and his impeachment and acquittal. Alright, President Bill Clinton became president in 1992. The elements here are President Bill Clinton, impeachment, his impeachment, and NAFTA. The things are political and social interactions, conflict and compromise, and U.S. role in world affairs. Let's first look at the relationship between Congress and the President Bill Clinton. President Bill Clinton was a Democratic president, but Congress in 1994, 2 years after he was elected, became totally Republican. And when the Congress is Republican and the president is from a different party, Democrat, then that's what you call a divided government. And so that's the relationship between the president and Congress at the time. Alright, so for the first time, I believe it was, 42 years, that the Speaker of the House was a Republican. Okay, so Republican domination in Congress, in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Republican majority was 52 to 48 Democrats in the Senate, 230 Republican Congress House of Representative members to 204 Democrats. So his relationship with Congress at the time was a divided government. They were from different parties. Newt Gingrich from Georgia became the first Republican Speaker of the House in 42 years. And when he came in as Speaker of the House, he and a bunch of other conservative right-wing Republicans come up with the Contract for America and started demanding certain changes happen in government. They wanted to deregulate the government. They wanted to reform welfare. They wanted less conservation within the United States because that inhibited the growth of business and the creation of jobs. Term limits for Congress, which was later declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. They wanted a balanced budget, no more deficit spending, and they wanted conservative values and principles returned to government. And so that's what Bill Clinton was dealing with and when he became president. Alright, let's move on to the impeachment. Bill Clinton became the second president in the United States to be impeached. The first was Andrew Johnson. We discussed that back in, I believe it was Unit 4, at the end of Unit 4. Bill Clinton becomes the second president to be impeached in the United States. He was being sued by this lady here, Paula Jones. She was a former employee of his when he was governor of Arkansas. She was a state employee. She accused him of sexual harassment while she was on the job there in Arkansas. And while he was president of the United States, she wanted to sue him in the sexual harassment suit and had to go through the court system, of course. And then she won the right through the court system to sue him while he was a sitting president. And so when he went to the trial or hearings about this Paula Jones case, he was asked while he was under oath if he had had sexual relations with a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. And it was relevant to the case because of the case of sexual harassment here. And while testifying under oath, President of the United States Bill Clinton was caught lying, and he said he didn't have a sexual relationship with this woman when in fact he did. And Kenneth Starr, who was prosecuting or dealing with the case with the president, eventually when he gets involved in this as well. It was also alleged that Bill Clinton asked Monica to lie in this Paula Jones case and say that she had never had a relationship with the president. So that's where this is the source of where he's going to be impeached. With the president lying under oath, that's called perjury, and with him asking Monica Lewinsky to lie, that's called obstruction of justice. So the president went on the air and actually told everybody in the nation that he never had sexual relation. Here he is here, January 26, 1998.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
And so that's what he told the American public on television. That was January 26th of 1998. Then on August 17th, 1998, he comes out and makes this statement.
I did not volunteer information. Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part.
And in that, he admitted that he lied earlier, back in January 26th, that he did actually have a relationship with her. And that means, well, he was testifying under oath that he had lied under oath. So he became the second president of the United States to be impeached. And his case, to be impeached, the Constitution has a certain protocol that has to be followed. The House of Representatives here on the right has the sole power of impeachment. Only the House of Representatives can impeach a federal official, like a sitting federal judge or the President of the United States or the Vice President. So the power of impeachment comes from the House of Representatives. So you have to have a majority vote. That's more than 50%, 51% is a majority vote to impeach the President of the United States. They hold a little hearing and they listen to evidence and all, and they vote to impeach or not to impeach. And he was impeached. Then the trial, where the president has his trial, where he can argue, where they can bring forth evidence and all, it happens in the Senate, which there's 100 members of the Senate because there's 2 senators from each state. But a 2/3 vote is needed to remove a president under an impeachment trial, to kick him out of office. And we saw this happen with Andrew Johnson back during Reconstruction, and that he was not removed from office by 1 vote. And now this is going to go to the Senate after President Clinton, the second president impeached. It's going to go to the Senate, but he's going to have a better vote than Andrew Johnson had back during Reconstruction. So, all right, let's look how the impeachment process went. All right, so in the House of Representatives, we're focusing over here on the impeachment. December 18th, 1998, the House of Representatives on articles of impeachment impeached President Clinton for violating 2 things: perjury, lying under oath in a court of law, and obstruction of justice, asking another to lie under oath. Now, when I ask what was the reason Bill Clinton was impeached, don't bring up Monica Lewinsky's name. I mean, don't say it's because he had an extramarital affair with her. Just say that he lied under oath, perjury, and obstruction of justice. That's exactly what it was for. A lot of people get sidelined by this pop stuff. But here's the real reason he was impeached: perjury, lying under oath in court, and obstruction of justice, asking another person to lie under oath. All right, this is the real reason why he was impeached. Okay, majority vote to impeach, and they did impeach him, and these are the 2 articles they impeached him under. Now the trial leaves the House of Representatives, it goes over here to the Senate. Okay, so in the Senate you need 2/3 vote to remove from office. There were 100 senators, so if you do the math, they needed 67 votes to remove President Clinton from office. On February 12th, 1999, they made their decision and voted. And on the perjury charge, 50 senators, half, voted that he was guilty, and the other half said he was not. And in the obstruction of justice, only 45 voted that he was guilty, and the others said he was not. So you needed 67 to remove, and you didn't get 67 on either one of these. So there were 17 votes short of removing President Clinton from office. So he was not removed from office. So what I want you to understand is that this procedure of holding impeachment proceedings in the House and then the trial in the Senate, constitutionally is very important. Okay. All right. So they were 17 votes short, so he was not removed from office. Okay. Now let's move on to NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. President Clinton, during his presidency, a regional economic area was created with Canada, Mexico, and the United States, referred to as the North American Free Trade Agreement, where the free trade emphasis here means that they reduced or eliminated tariffs, and we talked about tariffs before, or taxes on imported goods. So this is a free trade zone, in other words, where no tariffs or reduced tariffs significantly between the three countries, so they could trade with one another. Alright, so this is going to promote free trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, or reduce the tariffs altogether. In other words, a tariff-free trade zone. And tariffs, again, are taxes on imported goods. We've been over that before, back when we talked about the nullification crisis. You can look at that video again if you need a refresher. So all this trade that's going to go on between these three countries are part of NAFTA, and trade will increase with the lowering or totally eliminating of tariffs. So you're going to have a lot of trade start happening between these three countries. A lot of trucks being driven through there, trading goods back and forth. Alright, so that's what NAFTA is trade agreement. Alright, a lot of people were against NAFTA, especially labor unions, people involved with labor issues. The biggest reason they didn't want it because they thought that a lot of jobs would go down to Mexico, the developing country. Two of these countries were developed. Okay, the United States was a developed nation, and Canada was a developed nation, but Mexico was a developing nation. And so a lot of Mexicans would work for very cheap wages. So lower wages, and Mexican government didn't have the regulations we do in the United States, as far as no National Labor Relations Board or anything like that, no workman's compensation, no minimum wage, no retirement stuff, no workman's compensation, none of that stuff in Mexico that they had in the United States. And we went through our labor history. You know, you can go back to the American Federation of Labor and all those labor disputes we talked about over time, and Mexico hadn't gone through all that, so they had fewer regulations in the United States, and that their workers would work for lower wages. So with NAFTA, with the reduction or elimination of tariffs and all these businesses, Americans felt like all these businesses were going to take their companies, shut them down in the United States, take them down to Mexico, and open back up, because all these big corporations could make more money by not having to pay the taxes to bring the goods into the United States, and they didn't have to pay a minimum wage. They didn't have to give them a 40-hour work week. They didn't have to pay them retirement. They didn't have to give them insurance or workman's compensation or any of those things. And some of these, the Teamsters, the truckers, were against this and said a lot of truckers are going to be put out of a job because these Mexican truckers are going to take over. NAFTA here, the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Workers, was against NAFTA because of the issue with labor. Here's some signs here showing that people wanted to keep jobs in the United States and didn't want to send all the jobs to Mexico. That was a big fear there, that would happen. And some political cartoons come out at the time. Here's Uncle Sam, and NAFTA's going to suck all the jobs away like a washing machine does socks. It's going to lose jobs. And here's one here, shows U.S. jobs on a train. There's NAFTA. The United States is going to lose jobs, in other words. Here's one here, Labor Day, U.S. factory. It says closed. This year's picnic will be held in Mexico where your job went. You know, that kind of brings out this issue of NAFTA and this fear that all the jobs would be going to Mexico. Even though President Clinton said that it would create more jobs in the United States. And the argument has been made that lower wage jobs, like especially jobs in agriculture, went to Mexico, but not skilled jobs in the United States didn't go to Mexico. Alright, so NAFTA, it also had environmental issues. These environmental threats. Environmentalists were really concerned about NAFTA's environmental impact on Mexico and the United States. So the environmental issues surrounded, first Food and Drug Administration and Department of Agriculture we had in the United States to make sure that no agricultural products or anything are consumed. We talked about Upton Sinclair's The Jungle and all the laws that passed, Meat Inspection Act, the Food and Drug Administration, all that. But Mexico, did it go through that? And the argument was no, it did not. So a lot of strawberries and tomatoes and things coming out of Mexico may be contaminated with bacteria or things of that nature, and we got to monitor that because they don't have environmental laws like we do to catch these things. Some people blame the swine flu on pigs coming out of Canada and Mexico come to the United States and said that it was because of NAFTA. And some people argue that cocaine and marijuana was come to the United States and we were taking toxic waste down to Mexico. But the biggest argument was Mexico was unprepared for the increasing scale of production that was going to be brought to Mexico because of this free trade agreement. Maquiladores are these big organizations that build up around the border. Most of them foreign owned by other countries that are going to try to take advantage of NAFTA. But that Mexico on the border was going to have this huge increase of industrial plants being built there. So it's going to go through some extreme industrialization, and absent some environmental policing agencies, like we have the Environmental Protection Agency, like their air and water and soil would be polluted from unregulated activities because they wouldn't have regulatory laws. No Environmental Protection Agency in Mexico. And in Mexico, in agriculture, they're still using the DDT we talked about from Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, the modern environmental movement. So these environmentalists and people were concerned about environmental issues surrounding NAFTA. Became a very big concern. And so the biggest places were Mexican petroleum sector, the oil being exported in the United States, in U.S.-Mexican transportation equipment sector. In other words, these big truckers going back and forth between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Would it cause a congestion problem with traffic? Would it cause truckers in the United States to lose their jobs? And then the metals that were going to be used in Mexico, there were environmental concerns there. And so with that, I think we've met 25E, explain the relationship between Congress and President Bill Clinton. Divided Congress, divided government. Include NAFTA, a North American Free Trade Agreement, and his impeachment and acquittal. If you have any questions, ask them in class. Good luck on the quiz test, EOCT.